Hello YouTube, welcome back to Nutkin Farm, but not for long. I'm actually going to visit my neighbour today and take you with me. Why? Because my neighbour, Peter Fraser, has just been given the AMS, Australian Macadamia Society Award for Small Grower of the Year. And I think he's the only person from New South Wales to receive one of the awards this year. But he had a great performance on his farm, and I want to pick his brains with you and find out how and why he gets the results that he does. And in this case, by results, I mean 6.5 tonnes of the standard nut and shell per hectare, which is an extraordinary achievement. So come with me and we'll find out. Peter Fraser, welcome to the Macadamia Show. Thank you for agreeing to talk to me. I know we're neighbours, and we've been neighbours for, 3 years now. And you've watched people blow in and blow out of Nutkin Farm with varying levels of dismay. But you've been here 38, is it, years?
Yeah.
This year? And you've run this from...
42, but anyway.
42, and then did you plant these trees that we see?
Yes, it was a rundown dairy farm.
Right.
little.
Like Nutkin? Yeah.
Yeah, very similar to your farm.
Yeah.
In a lot of aspects, soils and topography and steepness of slopes.
And rainfall, as we keep finding out.
And the clay, which is not as bad as Danone clay, but pretty clay, which makes getting on and off the fields after rain tricky.
And that's why we're here. Neither of us can get on our machines today because we had a bit of a dump last night.
That's it.
17 mils on your gauge. And in fact, Rosebank is, I've looked at the average rainfall on the BOM. Our local BOM is at Repentance Creek, just up the road from you. Last year we got 2,133 mils.
Is that right?
So over 2 metres last year. Over 2 metres the year before that as well. And that's regularly about 400 mils more than the Alstonville Plateau, which is measured at Maclean's Ridges. So rainfall-wise, this has got to be one of the wettest areas we grow macadamias in Australia, because we're way ahead of Bundaberg and we're way ahead of the mid-north coast most years. And the wet must be something to do with your results, because you're getting these fabulous results from your trees. And I'm here to find out how, actually.
Well, I think you're right. So Clunes, which is only a few k's away, it gets about halfway between Lismore, which is now recording at only 1,200 mils.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But that isn't accurate. That's only goes back to 2007.
Their BOM stations are recent.
Yeah.
Yeah, our one goes back to 1950,
so we've
57.
Had 10 dry years since, now 14 dry years except for the last 2.
That's
since
why.
they recorded it,
Right.
and it should be more like before they changed, it was about 1,600.
Yeah.
Before they changed the date, then we had 10 dry years. Well, let's keep the average down to about 1,200 now,
Which is the same as Sydney.
Yeah,
I know. It's no better than Sydney.
It's not
really
true.
No,
because that's quite a dry. That's just dry years.
Well, you put in the 1974 flood, and that'll change the average a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put in this year, and it'll change a bit.
Yeah.
Well, last year.
I haven't looked at Lismore last year.
Yeah, it'd probably end up with about 1,700.
Well, Maclean's Ridges was 1,750.
Yeah. So Maclean's Ridges and Lismore is
very
similar.
close. Yeah. But that covers the Alstonville sort of plateau. Yeah. So rain's a factor, and you say the soil must be a factor.
It's the nature of the rain too that's quite important, and whether it's the nut trees like it, I don't know, but certainly it's a big difference. Say with Clunes, it rains a lot more.
Yeah.
Days are wet.
Yeah.
Less dry days. So it's often raining here when it isn't raining at Clunes or Lismore. Lismore's much drier. And even Lismore, you drive out towards Casino and it just stops 2 kilometres out of Lismore a lot of times.
A lot of times?
It can be raining here for 3 months straight, and yet you can drive to Casino into sunshine regularly. It's You know, it sets in here, and the last place for it to clear is this up against the hills. So that includes Durrabee, Rosebank.
Dunoon to a point.
Dunoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dunoon's nearly as wet as here.
Yeah, that's right. But it's not quite as far up against the hills, so it's a little bit drier.
Yeah. And it can get bad westerly winds too, whereas we seem to be sheltered from just about everything. Those storms we've had hit recently I've been here since 2019. Every major storm that's pulled up trees has missed Rosebank.
Yeah, I
we're
know.
kind of due. We're kind of due for one, aren't we?
Well,
am I jinxing us?
No. It's a big thing with macadamias because they will break.
Yeah.
All this tree removal stuff makes them vulnerable as well. So,
well, speaking of that, I mean, we're between two rows of trees here. That's a good 16 metres, isn't it? Well, how?
15 metres.
15, right?
Yeah, so we started out at 7.5 metres, which could be called a mistake, but then 15 metres looks a pretty good size right now.
It's a pretty big width, and just I'm moving to the middle of the row.
Between, yeah.
You haven't got that much space between canopies. You've got enough to let the sun in, which you want, obviously.
Yeah.
So that you've got fruit up and down the tree.
And we need a bit of grass to slow down the water flow down this sort of slope. This is 15 degrees here. And
so the steeper the slope, the more row space you're inclined to allow.
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
Absolutely, yes. That would be the wise thing to do. I think this paddock is planted, my first paddock ever planted.
This one here, yeah.
And we put it across the slope, and we thought it's actually a reverse of the system they use for dry lands, where they plant on the contour.
Yes.
So this is the reverse of the contour. So the idea was that all the rain would shed down the contour and out of the rows, but there's just so much rain here, it's not.
It doesn't work that way. Whereas Nutkin's planted on the contour, and it has its own set of problems. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the contour, and I don't. This is sort of, even though it's a reverse contour, it's still a cross.
Right.
Really, the way to plant a paddock is down the slope.
Yeah.
With if it's steep or got much slope, anything near like 15 degrees, wide spaces in between with proper drains.
Right.
Down every row.
And the wide spaces means you'll keep your ground cover for the drains.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, whether you choose to plant an inter-row first, while the trees are young, personally, I don't think there's any money in doing that. Everyone does it. Plants at close spacings and then thins them out, or chooses not to, which is a disaster.
Yeah.
But everyone plants at close spacings. But in the end, if you're going to plant in this situation here, you'd need to start with at least a 15 metre wide row to fit the drain in.
Yeah.
With these sort of sized trees. There are young trees coming along, and that's what I'd be planting, the new varieties.
Yeah.
They're small trees.
Yeah.
These are big trees. Even the ones they say are little trees all turn out to be big trees.
Now, are these...
when they're 40 years old.
Yeah. Now, in one of your earliest videos, and people can find you online easily enough, you've been interviewed more often than you want to be. But you said your main variety in this orchard was Nutty Glenn.
Yes.
And you planted that. This is in the early 80s, when, as far as I can tell, people were planting 344s, 246. Yep. What made you a nonconformist, or are you just a nonconformist kind of guy?
No, I worked in the nut industry as a labourer. While I was at uni, and I saw what the work we're required to do, which was patching up broken trees.
Yeah.
That was the predominant work I did.
But was Nutty Glen a resilient tree of some...
It is a very strong tree.
Right.
So of all the trees, they've all broken over the things from storms and wind events, and Nutty Glen haven't.
Yeah.
They just don't break.
Well,
344 was brought in for that same reason. It was imported as a strong
tree.
Tree, and relative to what they were planting then, which was 246 and H2, which are very fragile trees.
Yeah, but 344s can blow over entirely, can't they?
They can all blow over entirely.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, I thought that was 344's downside was that you could lose a whole one, whereas the 244 will just drop limbs on you. And 246
they split and destroy themselves, so there's only the trunk left, is what they used to do predominantly. We've been had very different weather since my early days, where wind events were much more frequent.
Right.
I suspicion we're coming back into an era like that.
We might be, yeah.
Judging by the number of storms we've had this year, which is about 50 storms so far.
Yeah. Yes, it's been a stormy year.
It has.
But look, Nutty Glenn...
None of them damaging this year.
No, well, not rosebank.
So far.
No, yeah, well, we're all crossing our fingers on that. But Nutty Glenn seems to be an upright tree with a prominent central leader. Yeah. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Most of these seem to have prominent central leaders, and
these are 344.
Oh, those are 344. Oh, well, that's why they look like mine.
Yeah.
So show me some Nutty Glens.
All right.
Okay. I was going to say these look like my 344s, and they look as tall as my 344s.
Yeah. Well,
only they've got decent row spacing.
Yeah, they got 17 metres. Some of them, the very tallest one.
Right.
They're ridiculously tall, very hard to spray.
I can see a decent crop on these. It's going to be hard to see on the screen for people, but it's interesting when a 344 has got actual sunlight on the side of the tree. It doesn't all crop up the top at all like some of mine. There's some decent.
You'll find, but this is a pretty good year for cropping on the shady side of the tree too. Like.
Right.
It's not going to have that amount, but...
What do you put that down to? Oh, who knows? Yeah.
Well, it's usually about how dry it is during the flowering.
Look at this. Out of season. I've never seen out of season flower in January.
Yeah, no. And it's usually, you see the out of season flower on trees that don't have any nuts.
Like
even a branch that doesn't have any nuts might produce flowers, but... I've seen a couple more as I've been driving around yesterday, and...
well, chances are the tree's having a good time.
I think they're confused.
Yeah.
They've had quite a lot to deal with in recent years.
Well, when they grow them in Hawaii, they didn't ever have a distinctive flowering and fruiting season because Hawaii's so equatorial.
Yeah.
And so you'd have several flowerings and fruitings a year in Hawaii, and they'd be smaller than the ones we get. We're all flush. We're all a flush of crop, a flush of flower. So
yeah, look, I don't know the Hawaiian industry at all.
Yeah.
But it does have a season.
There is a predominant season, but it's...
most of the nuts are available because we used to market relative to that.
Yeah.
But yes, if they produce nuts all year, well...
Some varieties did. And when they brought them to Australia, of course, they behaved much more like they do in their native sort of native country. Yeah. So, okay, this is a big drain I'm looking at now, going down, between two of your blocks?
Yeah, so this is to take off rain that would run any rainfall from the shed and the roads and that, which is
right
to get it away from the orchards.
Yeah, that's a different tree?
Yeah, that's a seedling that I've just been interested in because it's quite productive, and I just left it there. So it somehow got established there, either from the nurseryman or the tree broke off and it's grown up from the roots.
From something.
It
looks like an 814, but it's.
I don't know it, and it could be.
Well,
I don't know that variety.
It's a very big leafed variety, and the new variety P looks a bit like that too, but not entirely. It's got huge leaves.
Whatever, I'd say it yields very well compared with 344.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
we don't have a problem with 344, but apart from wet years like this, where we get quite a lot of black rot and
in the flowers or
in the nuts.
Oh, in the nuts itself.
And they fall off onto the ground unripe. We've had a bit of that this year, but it used to be the predominant problem. So, and nut borer used to knock off maybe 50% of 344s.
Right.
Since the nut borer has not been a problem in the last 10 years.
Do you do the cards for it?
Sorry?
Do you do the cards for it, the wasp cards, or
no,
you spray?
Do you?
No, I do the cards.
Yeah, I'm probably
Yeah.
going to.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know if it's cheaper necessarily. Yeah.
A lot of the nuts on the ground this year have got
Nut borer.
nut borer in them.
Yeah.
In saying that,
Well, that's one
that
thing
may
I.
not,
That's one thing I don't have.
certainly we're not looking at spraying for it,
No.
but it does seem to be the wet years are coming back,
Yeah.
and
And that means high pest pressure.
well,
generally.
from nut borer, which used to be the main pest,
Yeah.
the worst pest in terms of yield loss, was nut borer.
And now it's fruit spotting bug, isn't it?
And now it's fruit spotting bug, yes.
Yeah.
And both of them like wet years.
Ah.
But the fruit spotting bug's not too choosy because it's done very well on our place. So we've
In the dry year too.
in the dry years too. So I think that's pretty well known about fruit spotting bug. It's just
Yeah.
it's not fussy.
And the things we can spray for them now are limited. I mean, I think in next month, February 22, diazinon loses its permit and you can't spray that anymore. And I was just reading there was a farmer in Brooklet who got himself fined and sentenced in the Land and Environment Court from a spray drift to a car that was driving by. And the driver complained of headaches and nausea from smelling diazinon. And the farmer got fined and it was upheld. So diazinon's having a very swift kick out the door. So what are you going to do when that is no longer available?
I'm going to probably use the wasps
Yeah,
and control it that way.
that's for macadamia nut
It's
borer.
not an easy pest to control.
Yeah,
It's hard work, and I find it very unpleasant because you've actually got to go around, and this is December, January, you've got to go around and look at the nuts.
to see for signs of holes.
Yeah, well, that's too late. You've actually got to look at the egg and see whether it's alive or dead. That's what you spend up doing. And my eyes aren't good enough. I can't see whether they're alive or dead. So that means I have to employ a pest scout. And it's a time-consuming job for them too.
The cards are better than that.
Eh?
The cards are the way of around that.
Yeah, well, in the end, the cards on my property cost me a couple of $1,000s a year.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah, a little less
bit
for
more?
me.
Oh, a little
No,
bit
no,
less.
no.
Yeah.
They get them in bulk at my agronomist, and I mean, I've been 2 Fridays in a row. You go down to the agronomist, pick up a bag full of these cards, you split them all up and staple them to every 5th tree or so. You go back another week and then you alternate the trees. Yeah, you just do the tree that you didn't do last time and staple it to the back of the leaf, and then they hatch, and it's complete control as far as that's concerned. But the other pests, like the lace bug and that sort of stuff, you've got to switch. Well, we've all got to switch to something else if pesticides get banned. And
Well, we try to avoid spraying in the flowering period.
Yeah.
Because
well, the bees are your friends.
yeah, anything that's on the trees moving around
Yeah.
is your friend. So if we do have to spray then, because our plans have gone astray, and that's not blaming anyone that gets that lace bug in their flowers, because it depends on the length of the flowering, on the luck when you got your spray done, whether it was raining and you couldn't get it done when you wanted to.
We had it early, yeah.
But if the flower is a long period, it's pretty hard to get the coverage over a long period of flowering. If it's a 2-week flowering, well,
Yeah.
you can do it just before the flowering opens. Some years it just flowers continually for months.
Which it did this
and so you
season.
can't spray it with those chemicals. We
Well-
try and get one on at the last point that we can.
Yeah.
But then it could rain then, and you might not get it on, and then the flowers are open and you can't really spray.
Well, we
comply with
use
the
systemics.
legislation.
Yeah.
And it does work, but I feel for people that, like, we're here every day, willing to work every day, every night. For those that are paying wages and got workers, it's pretty hard to get all the sprays on if the weather's not helpful.
Yes, yep.
And the wind in these areas here too.
Can stop spraying.
Well, if you've got neighbours, the wind isn't like, say you're on the cane land down there
Down near
it's blowing
Ballina.
southerly. It's blowing southerly. You know, whether what's all supposed going to go here
Yeah.
just swirls and carries on. If it's got any west in it, it can blow from any direction at any time.
Yeah.
When it's blowing westerly. So, you know, trying to avoid your neighbours is tricky.
Yeah. I see you've got irrigation lines here. These or are they irrigation lines?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we converted this from blueberries, but
have you had to do any this year?
no.
No, you wouldn't. So
Most years that's just an annoyance to have irrigation lines in the road.
Yeah.
It prevents driving that direction.
I was going to say, if this is one of the wettest places to grow macadamias, it's sort of, you wouldn't expect to see irrigation lines here at all. But there was a year, obviously that last year, the 2020 season, where it was extremely dry up until Christmas, and you still got a decent crop out of that, didn't you?
We use this to give them the minimal amount of water, the irrigation system. We don't irrigate as such.
Yeah.
Most years we don't irrigate it at all.
It's an emergency measure.
Yeah. So I know when the trees run out of water.
Yeah.
I think that's important to understand that a full-size macadamia tree like this can drain the water out of this profile.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I saw some stats.
Spring growing.
Yeah.
And I observed this in Alstonville, which is possibly a little bit less. Alstonville clays and structures mean that it holds less water than us, and they've often been cropped heavily for 40, 50, 100 years with crops like peanuts and stuff like that, and very little good soil management, just crop and crop and crop.
They lose their organic matter.
So they're low in organic matter naturally and well drained and hold a little bit less, but they hold only 150 mils of water per metre of depth of root depth we've got.
That's not much.
Yeah, if you look at what the tree can use, in theory, all that water's used up in 2 weeks.
Yeah. I've seen some amazing stats on how much water macadamia trees use.
As well, that can be even higher.
On evaporation.
Windy and hot as well.
Yeah.
So just in cooling, as well as the tree needs.
Yeah.
And we verified this with in the Alstonville soils.
Yeah.
It was really clear in the end. So here, this sort of clay is different. It holds more water, but it's harder for the tree to get it out.
Yeah.
So what you've got here is probably the perfect soil not to irrigate on.
Yeah.
Because
you rely on its water
holding.
holding.
The tree can use energy to get water out of this soil for a long time.
Yeah.
So, but it's got to use energy. It's got to physically drag it out of the water. So the difference between, I think they called it wilt point, is the freely available water to the roots.
Yes.
Down to dry is a long way in this soil. So there's a lot of water in the soil that the tree can get, but it's got to use its energy to get after wilt point. With Alstonville, less clay, more drainage. So
it needs more water. But there's an argument for higher feeding then.
When it runs out, there's not much left. When this soil runs out, when it gets to wilt point, after say 2 weeks, it's still got weeks and weeks of residue water in here that it can extract to keep itself healthy. That's not going to produce carbohydrate and nut growth and all that sort of thing, but it does enough to keep the tree healthy.
Yeah. What trees are we looking at here now?
Okay, these are A16s. That's that skinny row there, and these are the Nutty Glenn.
These are Nutty Glenn. Okay, let's have a look. So we've got a serrated leaf pattern, which is like a larger version of an A4. Really,
it's a parent of the A4.
It's not. I know. You've said that before, and I checked you up. It's from Norm Grebber's farm, which was called Nutty Glenn, and if anything, it's an uncle of A4. But A4's parent is Renown. Is a nut called Renown, also off also off the same farm. Nutty Glenn is in fact a dead end. It's a dead end genetically, and that's one of the reasons that it interests me, that if it crops so well for you, then how is it not used in other breeding programs to try and create new hybrids? Has anyone actually asked you, can I get a sample of this or a cutting in order to try and use it?
The main reason is because it's best off not cooked with other varieties.
It's different roasting profile.
Yeah. Oh. So
some nuts roast better than others. I heard 246 isn't a good roaster.
It's got a high sugar content.
Oh.
As do most of the tetrafillers.
Right.
So it's very similar to D4 in roasting.
Yes.
And they would combine D4 and Nutty Glenn. D4 is also quite a rare variety.
From the same farm too, I think.
I think so.
They're from, is it Arramore? The farm was called Nutty Glenn. That was that was Norm Greber's own farm. That's why, yeah, you wouldn't normally call a nut after a glen, but that's his farm. Yeah. Yeah, brilliant breeder. Absolutely well ahead of his time, and own choice is still used in some breeding, but not Nutty Glenn, and that's why I thought, well, if you're getting
got a few problems.
What's its main problem?
It doesn't like rain on its flowers.
Oh, none of them do.
Therefore, in our environment here, where it rains during the flowering period quite often,
yeah,
the crops are definitely down.
We got one dump in September that Alstonville didn't get. We got a dump of about 52 mils here that Alstonville didn't get, and I think that hurt my later 344 flowers. Yeah,
it can a lot.
So and so, all right. So it doesn't like rain on the flower, but what is it?
It has a concise, and the trouble with that is, like, well, you're going to go, well, that's the same if it hits a 344, but the difference is this has a much narrower period of flowering.
Which makes it more vulnerable.
If those 2 weeks, you get if those 2 weeks are raining, you get a terrible yield.
That's why they say 2, 4, 6.
It might be the flowering main point of the flowering is that they've already had enough flowers, that they've set enough up before the main flowering.
And then no one cares.
And that's right.
Yeah.
You may get a little bit more out of your main flowering, but most of the nut set is already established. Most of the main flowering just falls off.
Yeah. Now, it's an upright tree. I can see there's a very definite central leader.
Yeah.
So that's a bit different to the other, to the A's.
Tree.
And it's, like a lot of the upright trees, they seem to be fairly wind resistant.
This is the most wind resistant tree that I know, but I don't know all the varieties either.
Right.
I don't know Renown, and I don't know Own's Choice particularly well either.
No, and my agronomist says you don't want to know Own Choice. It's got some drawbacks. How is it for husk spot?
Pretty good.
Okay.
We don't usually put it in our spray program for husk spot.
Yeah.
But
stick tights?
No.
It's okay for stick tights. Right.
Healthy trees has very little stick tights. It's not impossible, but generally they have a concentrated falling, and they all just fall off.
Yeah.
In about 2 weeks in May or June.
Well, now you know why it's not the parent of A4, because A4.
Yeah. Well,
oh, look, I've got some A4s. Their stick tight isn't too bad, but
I've made a lot of money out of them, I reckon.
Yeah.
A4.
Yeah. You've got them on here too.
But again, like Nutty Glenn, it is much more likely to have a concentrated flowering period.
Yep.
And again, some years you don't get many A4s.
Yeah.
And you really got to wonder why you grow them.
Yeah, they're high kernel but low yield. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think they're a useful pollinator from that point of view. So they were grown partly to be another pollinator for A16.
That's huge numbers of flowers. Yeah.
A16 is a great pollinator, I believe.
Yeah. You actually, I think in one of your videos, you said that A16 treats you very well here, and that's...
Well, I hear lots of people in this area that don't like A16s. It doesn't produce enough nuts.
Yeah.
Well, it's the opposite for us. It produces plenty of nuts. It's just such a long drop period.
Its stick tights are
crazy. You know, like really, you stop picking them up. And when you stop picking them up in even end of September, you know, there's still quite a bit of nut
on the tree.
And you're not going to pick it up because you've got to stop harvesting eventually, otherwise it becomes 12.
Well, two years running now, my A16s are doing well. So it's gone from the tree that I was taught to hate to the tree that I hate to love, because they've got a real, the babies in the block nearest you have just got an enormous crop on, even the little trees that have been starved for 10 years.
If you've got a limited number of trees, the A16s, you've got to look after them.
Yeah.
In the years that they need special treatment.
It's the 3-4-4s.
They reward you.
Yeah. And we're going down here. I mean, obviously there's a bit more of a slope down here. Can we go a bit further down, or what's worth looking at?
Yes, we've got more bigger nutty glands down further.
Okay. Now, all planted. I mean, here we've got another, on the other side of this irrigation line, we've got another wide row spacing.
Yes, so this...
There's no ground cover at the moment.
No, well, this was supposed to be a drain, but it's been so wet we couldn't get a contractor. So we're going to put a new drain in across there.
Gee, that'd be useful.
There.
A V drain.
Yeah.
Oh, to go down, right.
There's quite a lot of slope here, and
you
get a lot of wash.
This soil's beautiful.
Yeah, well, that's what it is down deep. That's just been dug up.
Yeah, but it's that crystalline red soil that...
Yeah, don't you love it when it's wet?
Yeah.
And that's sort of what the surface layer is from the organic matter we put in.
Yes.
So you don't really want red soil like that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's great. But I need to talk to you about your feeding, because, in the AMS magazine, they've said you've managed to achieve the yields you've got purely through manures and any supplementation you need to do for things like boron. You didn't used to do that, did you? I thought you were with the Ray O'Grady program for a while, and he was big into foliar feeds. And
we do use foliar. We haven't this year because it just rained plenty. We only use foliar, I guess, calcium and boron pre-flowering. So we usually put on that.
Is that Organiball, or what? How do you put it on? Is that foliar?
Yeah, foliar.
Right.
I don't like many of the foliar fertilizers. I think they're not very useful.
No, NPK is useless.
But foliars have got to be in the right form.
Yeah.
To be useful. You got those research.
I know you like kelp.
Yeah, well,
there's evidence for it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's evidence for it. It's something that I just take the word for it. It costs very little. You're often spraying anyway, and I guess my tree health during the stressful periods is pretty good.
Yeah.
And whether that's the kelp, so in the extremes of drought, that's when
you've used it.
Put it on, and
yeah,
my tree health's remained well. How much is that down to the kelp? I don't know, but
I
just trust that there is a body of research out there, and an awful lot of enthusiastic people for kelp all over the world.
Yeah. They can't all be right.
It's not a fly-by-night thing. It's something that's gone back centuries, and it's been the basis for a lot of horticulture.
Oh no, it's not in the hippie realm.
No,
not at all.
It's a proven thing. So I just put it on and assume it. Sometimes it'll help, and sometimes it mightn't. But,
but were you ever a chemical feeder? Did you ever used to do granular? Or
yes.
Until when?
Well, I think it was the oil crisis.
Oh, that long ago?
Yeah, it's a long time. So during the oil crisis, the price of fertilisers, including superphosphate,
you should see them now.
Most of them just doubled in price.
Yeah.
And we had no money. Like, we were living off what we could
harvest here. Yeah.
Well,
No, I know you're the only true farmer in the entire area. The rest of us are all people with other jobs. I think.
I don't know about that. Yeah. And in saying that, whether we would have survived if it was just off the farm, my wife's a nurse.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. It's nice to have that little base amount of income coming in that you can survive.
No. My builder's a macadamia farmer, the one who did some work on my place.
Yeah, builders. Yeah, there's a lot of people.
My mechanic's a cattle farmer. I think it's a Northern Rivers thing that everyone's got two Two lines of defence. Yeah.
Yeah, if you cane grow, a lot of them are mechanics.
Oh, are they? They have to be. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they're lean, they just can't afford a mechanic, so
Yeah.
they've learned to do it themselves, and then they're going, oh, I'm pretty good at this.
Yeah.
And I've got plenty of work to do here, and they train themselves up, and next thing they're out there.
Yeah.
Because there's no money in cane at all.
No.
Some years.
Oh, most years. Now I'm walking on a very soft surface, which looks like it's covered in wood chip.
Yep.
And I know you do get wood chip in, so I'm cheating a little bit, but I can clearly see the wood chip.
That's come out of the chipper.
Oh, that's from the chipper,
That's
right?
From the chipper.
Right.
Yep.
And it's a very spongy.
Cut down this row here. We've only half cut it down.
Yep.
Every second tree, and we put the wood chip in this row.
Yep.
Probably the row above it as well.
Right.
And even some of it would have made it down as far as that next row.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great resource to be removing trees.
Yeah. It certainly, I can see if I look at that row and then I come over to this row, which you're going to remove, I can see the basics of root exposure. Not serious by any means, but I can see that there has been some root exposure in that row that the chip's going to cover.
Yeah, so that's a Nutana Glenn row. Yeah.
Does this last or
on there?
Right? But will these roots expose themselves again anytime soon, or how long would you expect it to last?
Well, if we get 3 or 4 rain events, some of that'll wash away.
Yeah.
Like cyclones and that sort of thing, it'll wash away. Eventually we'll have a drain here.
And you'll get your ground cover back.
And another drain there. And that's already got one drain there we put in to see if it works, and it works really well.
Yeah.
This one just here.
I can see the grass coming back over there.
Yeah, well, the grass is coming back. We haven't got the drain dug.
Yeah.
This drain we did a few years ago. That was the steepest bit there. And it was just terrible, the erosion. So we put that in there. And
do you have a favourite ground cover?
Not really. We just use some other grass.
Right. Well, smother grass has been a staple for the industry for a long time. There's people questioning it a little bit now, but
what happens with smother grass, you'll really like it at these sort of spacings.
Yep.
When you knock out this row here, and not so much in this paddock, but the smother grass, when it's in full sun, grows very fast.
Right.
From now on till May. So the trouble that people find is they knock out every second row and everything's great, everything grasses up, no more erosion, it's wonderful.
And then they give themselves another problem.
But they've got a huge problem in getting the nuts picked up. So you sort of have to harvest every 2 weeks.
And then mow straight away.
Yeah. And that's all very well in theory, but if it rains for a month or rains for 2 months...
Yeah, good luck with that.
Where you're left with dense grass
that you can't get nuts out of,
which the nuts underneath it are lost.
Look, last year I actually had to mow before harvesting because you just couldn't get a nut up.
And quite often in those circumstances, the ground's really wet too.
Yeah,
so you drive over with your tyres
just gets planted.
Squashed.
Yeah,
what we really need is a hover mower.
Yeah. Well, look, the new varieties I'm planting.
That exists.
Yeah, if it would be great. Or I've seen models of a sort of a Roomba style vacuum cleaner there's robot mowers available, but not for large orchards yet. The battery power just doesn't take it far enough, but it's coming.
Yeah.
You'd think it's coming, and robot harvesters as well, but that go along and they can identify nuts and specifically pick up individual nuts off the ground.
In saying that, under those circumstances, it's really important to have a good harvester.
Yeah.
That picks up a large percentage of the nuts.
In one pass.
Front,
yeah.
If you pick up 95% of the nuts, it doesn't matter if you squash the rest into the ground.
Yeah.
Just on your wheel tracks.
What's your recommended harvester for a place like this?
Look, just
a smallish one, or
something that picks up all the nuts.
Right.
For us,
like a Rob Mac or a...
Ours is the perfect harvester, really, as far as the technology currently available.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's perfect. If it didn't touch the ground, it would be perfect.
Yeah.
But no, just the wheels themselves and the ejector system means that it all works well. Like, it doesn't block up all the time, because our previous harvester, which was very similar in style, just
blocked up too much.
Blocked up too much. And it took a long time to harvest the farm. Now it's with this one here that doesn't block up at all. It's 4 times quicker, like 4 times quicker. So going
and
on
you
this
need
road
time
here, especially if they've had a storm and there's lots of sticks and stuff and leaves, you may have to stop 4 times and clear the harvester by the end of the row.
Bloody hell.
90 trees,
or
whatever, 30 trees. So in 30 trees you've stopped 4 times. Well, you could have done
a whole row.
You know, that's 4 times up, 4 times back.
Well, I contract harvest, but stoppages, they cost me money as well as time.
They do. So if you get a contractor, you want to have him have the best machines. But also the fingers need to be in good condition. Some of the contractors you'll see on YouTube and that, they're throwing away fingers that look pretty straight to me. But they're doing it all the time over a lot of farms, and they know what works, and they know the really straight, fresh, new fingers.
They grab the nuts
a lot better. Once you get down to ours, starting this season, we're probably a bit old, the wheels. They're still straight, but they're a bit old, and you know, you might lose 10%. If you're going to run that into the mud, that's quite important in your
it's worth some dough.
10%. That's 5 tonne or whatever. That you've lost
30 grand. Well, maybe not 30 anymore. Have you got any feelings about what the macadamia price might be?
I've had a couple of.
Have you had a couple of softening up sessions from Marquee? Or?
First one was a bit devastating. They said to me, "This is totally unofficial. My guess is $4."
Oh no.
And I put it to...
and the cost of our inputs has gone up so much.
I better not say...
No, it's okay. It's okay. You can keep it off camera.
Anyway, the person who probably knew more about it, I did us at a Christmas party, and he said $4.50 would be his guess. But it's too early to guess. So the problem is...
well, the marginal farms make a loss, and it just changes the level at which some farms make a profit, I suppose. Well,
I think our cost of production is $3.50 a kilo. So if it's $4, we're not making much.
We're not making much.
Farm.
If
it's $4, we make twice the profit. $4.50. So I'm pretty happy about doubling my profit. But who knows? It'll depend on the exchange rate. Who can predict the exchange rate?
Well, the exchange rate, they said, was going to be 80 cents by the end of the year, and that was one of their reasons why they were only going to give us $5 a kilo. And it turns out that the Australian dollar stayed low, and at the end of the year it was 71 cents.
And it's still around that now.
I think the process has probably made a bit of dough out of us, but you never know what the demand side was.
I don't think so. The trouble is they haven't sold that crop from last year. That's a huge problem in terms of their profit and what they can pay, because they don't know that they'll sell that.
Well, we've got a clash apparently, because if this crop starts dropping at the end of January, which everyone seems to be predicting, they're going to have to come out with a price before they've sold last year's crop. And that's what worries me about the price.
It's nature of what they haven't. So that year, the previous season, was uncharacteristic in...
$6. You mean the $6 season? That was a good season,
that was it. The season that's just passed, and that there's nuts left over from. The nature of the nuts is that, or the demand for nuts at the moment is very poor demand for processing styles.
Right.
And very high demand for wholes and halves. So all the wholes and halves are long sold.
Right. So it's the crumbs and the things you put in ice cream.
The crumbs and the chips. Now
that's interesting info.
So what happened last year, and no one knows why, they produced a lot of crumbs, and chips.
Right.
So 50% of the total crop was crumbs and chips. And obviously they sold a fair bit of that, otherwise I'd have half the crop to sell.
And this is why no one can give me an answer to this question. Why are they not paying growers bonuses for the number of holes? Because you can grow certain varieties that have a large percentage of whole kernels. Like the A38, the 849.
If they were, the decisions to plant would be different. And unfortunately we've just gone through this great big planting thing, and there's been no indication in the market
Of what they want.
of what they want.
Yeah.
But what they clearly want is big whole nuts,
Yeah.
followed by whole nuts.
No, I met the managing director of
And
MWT, the same thing. He says, we want big round balls.
Yes, yes.
And I said, all right,
You can't-
fine.
There's never any trouble selling those 000 style
Grade 0, yeah.
and style ones.
Yeah,
No trouble at all.
yeah.
They just walk out the door.
But they don't pay farmers for them. Well, they don't differentiate.
No,
Yeah,
they don't pay for size,
yeah,
and size is,
yeah.
you know, when
I grow, just as an experiment, I picked up variety 835, which was tried, but no one ever picked it up. It's got the highest rate of whole kernels of any macadamia.
that's what you planted, is it?
No, I've planted just a few as an experiment.
Yeah.
I've got one block where I've got over 10 varieties of macadamia,
Okay.
trialling a lot of them. The actual serious planting I'm doing in my block coming up is variety R, which is one of the new ones, and it's got over 60% whole kernel. Reasonable size nut. It's got a reasonable size husk and shell, which gives me a margin of safety, because so many of the new ones are really thin husk and thin shell, and I think they're pretty vulnerable, or as a management problem. But, you know, I'd love to be able to say I'm going to get more for these nuts because I've got a high percentage of whole kernel. It's just instinct that maybe one year the processors might say, geez, farmers, we're going to count your whole kernel. It's in every stats for every batch they give you. Marquee does it. I know Marquee. MWT does it. They'll say percentage whole kernel. Why aren't we getting a bonus for that?
Well, we do get a little bonus, but not much.
Oh.
I've never got one.
Oh.
Oh, no, I have on a couple of deliveries, but just a small amount. You just go, well, that's not going to make
Yeah.
any difference.
Well, 344's no star for whole kernels. Neither is A16. What's Nutty Glenn like? Hard to tell.
Well, it tends to produce some holes.
Yeah.
Obviously, because I haven't got many bonuses from it, but, from that system, but from the size of the nuts.
Yeah.
But what it does produce is a lot of big halves,
Right.
and even those big halves are still bigger than.
Yeah, by reputation,
whole
it's a very big
344.
nut. It's a very big nut. Nutty
Yeah,
Glen.
yeah.
And it's almost 50% kernel recovery, isn't it? Largely, it's very high.
Sean Stead gets 50%. We get 48% at the best.
Well,
I don't know why.
that's better than all the new varieties. I mean, I think the highest of the new varieties is J, which is 46%.
Yeah.
Our
40%,
MCT1's over 40.
That's good enough.
Yeah.
Anything over 40
Yeah.
is good enough, I believe.
And the processors will pay you a higher price for them, but not for holes. I still can't get over that. But anyway, I should move on.
For what do they pay you more for?
Higher kernel recovery.
Yes.
Yeah, the price directly relates to the percent kernel recovery you give them. And I suppose they're paying for kernel at the end of the day, and you can say fair enough. But if it's the whole ones, they can sell. Anyway. So this is this drainage here. Obviously we're now, and it's hard to show on the camera, but we're starting quite a steep slope from the right down to the left, and you've got a clear drainage channel going along there, and then between these trees further down. Does it do the job?
No. No, this is what we were hoping to fix, this section through here. So cut out a couple of trees.
Yep.
In this section here, we've already cut them out down further, but we realised the contractor wasn't coming.
Right.
Get this properly grassed up. This drain just works.
Yeah.
So it's okay. This drain here doesn't, but...
Right. So not wanting to be Captain Obvious, but if rain's coming and there's nut on the ground, is it these steep rows you harvest first?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And how far do we go down here? This goes all the way to the boundary, does it? I'm trying to get my bearings.
You can. No.
Goes to the boundary to my place.
It's pretty close. So at the bottom down there is a steep gully.
Yep.
And then steep up to your boundary.
Right.
So your boundary runs, you can see a tree through the top there, a rainforest tree there. That's probably on your place, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So it's not far.
No, it isn't. It isn't far. But
it'd take you a while to walk through that way.
Yeah. Now, have you done any recent plantings on the place?
Only little bits.
Little bits of, yeah. There's one person who looks at my videos he said, look, can you ask Peter Fraser this? He said, you said in the AMS magazine, when you're planting little ones, don't let them get too tall too quickly. What's the reasoning behind that? I mean, we all want our baby trees to grow up, or to grow and then produce a crop.
Well, I believe, as I did 40 years ago when I started, that, you know, we've invested a fortune and many years in these trees, which are very vulnerable to blowing over.
Right.
In the worst of the weather that we're likely to get.
Yeah.
And I would think that a lot of people, the way they're planting, are going to get to about the trees when they're about 3 years old, they'll all blow over.
Right.
Especially on the cane land.
Yeah.
And once they've blown over, you lose a fair bit in terms of damage to the roots.
Yeah.
They may appear to be okay, but lots of important roots will have broken off.
I think you said they'll always struggle after that.
Well, they might.
Yeah.
What they struggle from is staking.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you've said don't stake.
A tree, it will never
it's a crutch.
support itself.
Yeah, I don't stake at all. I agree with you on that.
And the stakes can only hold up a tree for a few years.
Yeah.
Unless you go to fence posts and
then it's on its own. Yeah.
You know, they're in the road.
Yeah, from mowing and
Everything.
from weed control and the lot.
Harvesting.
Harvesting, yeah.
So it's only a short-term thing.
So in practice, though, what do you
and
do?
The most vulnerable at year about 8.
Okay, about year 8.
So you've got a tree that's this big.
Yep.
It's got substantial roots
Yep.
underneath it.
Yep.
It's got a huge head on it.
Yeah.
And a cyclone or a strong wind comes along and they all fall over. Now, when you try and straight up a 7-year-old tree, you get a lot of breaking of roots.
Yeah. Well, there's no taproot.
Hey?
There's no taproot.
Well, people say macadamias don't have a taproot, but that's just not true.
They do, you think, have a...
We destroyed the taproot.
Right.
So I was involved with court case where the absentee farmer had his farm planted out with pecans.
Oh, yes.
Is down here at Nashua.
Oh, right.
He retired after years of working in the city and making his fortune, and thinking he was retiring to a farm that was just about to start producing living quantities of nuts.
A common retirement plan.
Yes, and
use it as a tax write-off on the way.
Trees were just dying, and he had it investigated, and he found out that all the roots were going round, or they had no taproot. Basically, the root structure had been destroyed, and he asked me, as a horticultural advisor, what I thought, and I said, look, I don't know anything about pecans, but I'll find out. And what I found out is that no pecan trees or any nut trees of any type are ever grown like we grow them in Australia, like our nut tree. And expanded that to gum trees as well, because people were growing gum trees in pots. Gum tree, little pot, planted out. Now, I planted some of them, and they all blew out. They just don't work. If you plant them in a forest and they're all packed in together and they can't fall over, maybe that'll work then.
Well, you see that around here, yeah.
You do, and that's the forestry style, but we don't use gum trees like that around here to grow forests. We use them for windbreaks or whatever purpose, but ones grown in pots aren't any good. Maybe if the pot was big enough, but long enough to handle the taproot.
But if you were planting a baby tree today, where else can we go? Can we? I'm absolutely loving the sight of these trees, by the way. They're such, I mean, they look like they're still flushing, which mine in general, which is a strange thing. They've got a summer flush.
6th flush this year.
It's not bad, is it? Yeah.
Well, we've had more than 3 flushes a year.
Yeah.
In 40 years of growing them, and you really want them to flush when they're little, because you want them to get bigger, but you don't really.
You don't want them to get too big. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. But
so this year's I
Yeah.
guess a response to the first wet year after 10 drought years, and they just want to grow.
Yeah. I can see an uphill downhill slope here that
You can also
you've got.
letting light in. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a pretty steep bit.
Yeah. Are you a fan of selective limb pruning?
Yeah.
Right. So and I mean, have you seen some farms where they've literally topped the trees at 4 metres and then said sink or swim?
This.
I mean, this because I've seen this tree here. Some people manually have done that in the hope that the trees will somehow rejuvenate themselves, and apparently the stats aren't good in terms of they never recover.
So badly, they just don't know what they're doing is the main problem.
Right.
So
that's storm damage, I take it.
No, we've pruned all these.
Oh, that's a prune.
Yep.
Right. That's a heavy prune.
Yeah, so basically taken out every second tree here.
Yeah.
This was very dark in here.
Oh, I can see where that tree struggled for the light. All the vegetation's up the top.
This is one of the other problems of nutty glens. They just don't grow grass underneath them.
Right.
So you can see on this row over here, which is a nutty glen next to a nutty glen.
Yep. They use the available space.
Sun shines through here. That's where the grass grows, to where the sun shines.
Yep.
Too dark.
Yep.
No plant growth. Oh, well, there's a plant. But
well, yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's just come up from its value of its seed, so nothing keeps on growing.
You get the odd rock like I do as well, I see. Yeah,
well, this
always keeps you alert when you're mowing.
A bit of topsoil over the years, but
yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were planting a baby,
and they rise up too.
Yeah.
Well, should we squash it down when we drive on it when it's too wet?
It's very spongy. Look at all this wood chip. It's a beautiful organic mix that you've got.
Yeah, well, we haven't had anything to wash it away yet.
Nothing. No, lots of rain, but not a lot of torrential rain.
We've had no torrential rain in this 1800 mil, and right back till March and February we didn't even get any really heavy rain.
Oh, there was a bit in February, but yeah.
Yeah, but even it wasn't as bad as what it could have been.
No. I agree with that. Put out the causeways, but
the day we bought this farm, it ran 10 inches overnight.
But the very day. Wow.
We bought it, and we stayed on the property. There was nothing here, but
and the farm
stayed
said,
on here, and it rained 10 inches.
Welcome to Rosebank. Yeah.
And then it didn't rain again for another till Christmas.
Yeah. So look, if you were planting new today, and you've obviously with a view to height control and protection and wind and that sort of stuff, what would you do with pruning a baby? Would you take out the central leader and make it branch, or what would you try and do to make it a resilient tree?
The mistake they make is feeding them too much when they're little.
Right.
You know, they got this tiny little tree and this great big paddock, and they just want to fill it all up with and produce nuts. Who can blame them for that?
Yep.
But to be putting on 3 or 4 times a year NPK fertilizer onto a little tree like that is just making it dependent on that. What you want to do is
would you prune? Would you prune a baby?
If you got to the position where the tree's blown over.
Yeah.
Okay, so it could be bad luck, or it could be that you've fertilised it too much.
Right.
What you want to grow is the roots faster than the top.
Okay.
So every time you put urea on there, it's going to go top.
Yeah.
It's almost, the tree can't stop itself, no matter how. You can see this in a nursery. You can put urea onto a nursery tree, and 2 weeks later it will have a big flush.
Yeah.
So you put something better on, not urea.
Yeah.
Say a small quantity of dynamic lifter.
Yeah.
It'll flush in 2 weeks, exactly the same. It's got its nitrogen.
Yeah.
It's only got a little bit, but it's got the full lot of nutrients, and it'll grow a moderate flush.
Right.
This is what you want to do in the paddock.
I've been doing slow release with, it's a enhanced dynamic lister. It's got a bit of sulphate of potash in it, but that and Osmocote, funnily enough, which is very slow release.
What you want before you start planting is a soil that's got everything in it.
Okay.
That way you're not just putting it on the tree. But say you're starting from new, build your mounds and your drains to start with.
Yeah.
In those mounds is a lot of goodies.
Yeah.
Not nitrogen. But you know, your phosphorus supply for 10 years, maybe.
Or the pH.
Well, your pH perfect.
Yep.
Get all that right. You can put the tree in there; it'll just grow by itself.
Yeah.
It doesn't need anything to grow. You know, right in the forest down here, they don't have any fertiliser going on them. They're all growing fine.
Yeah,
they're
growing.
all native trees that grow in the same environment as
a macadamia. Yeah.
And they don't need fertiliser, and they're strong, fine trees.
Yeah.
This is, I think, what once you start, you know, you just plough a mark and put a tree in there, it's not ready for that macadamia tree.
Yeah.
It's not going to grow well in it.
No. No, I've had soil testing
people
done.
Go and put on, you know, a little circle around your tree of things. You know, there's no roots anywhere else, so why would you put it anywhere else?
Yeah.
Fair enough. But it ends up with this thing. I mean, over the years I've seen it. Almost every single farm that's been developed grows the trees too quick.
Yeah.
And at, you know, years 3 and up to years 8, they blow over lots. And sometimes they recover and become good orchards, and other times it's patchy orchards, so they're being stood up.
Or they have to fill the
up
gaps.
a tree and it makes a big crunching sound, then just rip it out.
Yeah.
If it stands up, and you have to stand them up when the ground's wet, not wait till it goes dry and get around to it then. You have to get straight out there.
I've learned that one.
So yeah, we did this farm. It took 6 weeks to stand up all the trees. There was 10 of us standing up trees. Everyone, we ripped out anything that went crunch.
Yeah.
Using a tractor to push them up.
Yep.
The 8-year-old trees, and everything got chucked that crunched. Towards the end of the 6 weeks, the ground was starting to get quite dry.
Yeah.
And lots of them were crunching up as breaking. So the ground was wet. You can ease them up slowly.
Yeah.
It's nice and slow. You can feel the crunch. You can hear the crunch. If it crunches the base part of the root.
But you know a lot of them. Right.
And I went back to that farm after 40 years, and it's a fine farm.
Right.
It's terrific. It's recovered from that. But what we did there as well is chop off 2/3 of the trees that had fallen over. So if they were just at a bit of a tilt,
Okay.
we might cut 1/3 off.
Okay.
So it's stuck, you know, the actual tree's done all right, it stayed there.
And the next time
So we
it
cut
branches,
1/3
it'll be
off.
vertical, you hope. Yeah.
Yeah, if they're a little bit crooked, you might not straighten it at all.
Okay.
But you don't want anything too crooked.
Okay. Oh, it's good.
You can.
It's good advice.
With a big tree, if you can't straighten it up. I've
Yeah.
got a few like that up here further.
Yeah.
That have blown over, and I've just left them there, and they're fine. But
Yeah.
they're ones that have only went that far, then they're strong enough to stay.
Well, most of these are straight as a die. I suppose, you know, you could argue. You can argue to an extent that's a problem because they're so upright, but then they are strong. So, yeah. Did you have a problem with spray penetration?
Much too lanky, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
We should have chopped out
Well, it's fighting for light.
that tree. Yeah, that's right.
So, but can spray get to the tops of these canopies?
Yeah.
You must have a fairly gun sprayer.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah.
You do it at night, I know, because I hear you from next door.
Less wind.
Yeah.
sorry about
Less
that,
wind.
but-
No. It's not an annoyance. I'm just saying.
If you've got wind, you can't spray these
Yeah.
height trees. Like
Well, with
this
my
amount of
contractors,
wind.
it's early in the morning.
Yeah.
Before the wind
But
picks up.
this wind here, you see contractors spraying in this sort of wind, you can't get to the tops of trees
Well,
like
they
that
get
without
busted.
wasting an awful lot of chemical.
They get
and the
busted for
chemicals
doing that.
Cost
Yeah.
a lot of money
Yeah.
if you waste them.
Yeah. So the recent spraying you've been doing is what, for fungus, or have you got pests at the moment?
Late
Fruit spotting bug.
Fruit spotting bug.
Oh.
And we put out. The trees have looked a bit grey.
Yeah.
Not that that's unusual if you drive around during that 2 weeks of continual rain. All the macadamia trees in the whole area looked a bit grey.
So a bit of
like
fungus.
khaki.
Yeah.
So that's lack of oxygen.
Right. So how do you fix that with spray?
Well, you can't fix it with a spray, but anytime there's lack of oxygen, and I'm also thinking what's coming up ahead.
Yeah.
February, I reckon it's going to be pretty wet.
Yeah.
We spray them with Fosjack, spray the leaves with Phosgec, and
which is a weaker phosphoric acid that protects against Phytophthora.
That's right.
Right.
It kills Phytophthora. If you spray it on the leaves,
yeah,
all these people doing trunk sprays, I don't know what theory.
There's a lot of different theories. My agronomist doesn't
Femi's
believe.
pushing it hard, and I've had a conversation which I didn't get finished with Femi because other people wanted to talk to him. But
Who's Femi?
he's the researcher that's in charge of diseases for Queensland deep.
Yes, I've seen him on the video. Yeah.
Yeah.
But is he a fan of foliar spraying? I know he likes metalaxyl when planting. I've watched his video. I've seen his recommendations, but
I think he's pretty right with most things he says. He started out a bit wrong and also a bit hard to understand, and he didn't get a lot of traction. But I think he's actually a really good researcher, and he speaks a bit. He's got a very African accent. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, we all struggled a bit at the start, and we're a bit annoyed that they picked someone that we couldn't understand that well. But anyway, he's proved to be good value, I think. Yeah. That sort of thing you might want to edit off. No, he's bag someone.
No, don't. That's okay. Don't.
But we've had lots of arguments about copper, for instance.
Yeah.
He believes that the copper's worth putting on for husk spot spray, and I go, well, look at your own data. Marginally better copper. Oh. We're using copper.
It's using copper hydroxide. Yeah.
Any copper.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It got my husk spot under control in the 2019-20 season, but that was the very dry season. Yeah. But that was the very dry season. It wasn't a big husk spot year, and I don't have a lot of husk spot susceptible varieties, and you've got A16s that need it. So.
All right. So every time
it did sort of work.
Spray copper.
Yeah.
You've got
what's all this? Oh. I thought you were looking at the nut for a minute, but now you've got a spanner. If your trees can drop spanners, you'll be rich.
Yeah.
I wonder what that came off.
Oh, the tractor, no doubt.
Yeah.
Sitting on the tractor and fell off.
Yeah.
It's pretty rusty.
Yeah.
So what was
we can head back.
The copper coats, particularly the underside of the leaf, but also the top side of the leaves, is completely covered in copper, and it stays that way till it falls off 5 years later.
Yeah.
When it falls on the ground, it doesn't want to rot away. It's just...
Really?
Yeah.
So that's a disadvantage. Well, I know that
the nut tree wants its leaves to rot down quickly.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's designed this leaf
to be its own fertiliser.
To be its own mulch.
Yeah.
Not fertiliser.
Mulch.
Eventually fertiliser.
Yes.
But after a long period of time.
Yeah.
So in its native environment, it's got nothing to disturb it. Brush turkeys might annoy it every now and then.
Yeah.
But basically it just stays and builds up.
Yeah.
The soil underneath that native situation is just amazing underneath it, where a tree's just sat there and dropped all of its nuts under the ground. They just stayed there. It's like you can dig your hand in like this.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's amazing. And Shorts grew their macadamias like this. They planted them. Kevin Short. They planted, him and his father planted trees at 14-metre spacings first up.
Right.
And they didn't use tractors or anything, and they just grew the trees and hand-picked them.
Right.
And they filled up the whole 15-metre space quite quickly, 246s they were, so quite spreading.
Yeah.
And under theirs was, like, I went and hand-picked there just because he said, you should come and have a hand-pick at my place, because we were paying for the farm by hand picking at this stage.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, look, I'm really interested in seeing what you've done, because at that point I was wondering how economical it is to harvest, own all the machinery, compared with hand picking and not having any machinery.
Yeah.
And paying contractors to do the spraying, but look, it doesn't work out.
I helped
wages and
no, it doesn't.
And availability of people willing to crawl around on your knees has vastly dropped off in the 40 years.
It has.
Went from easy as pie, you can find 1 million people and they're happy to do it, and they all love their work.
Yeah.
To now almost impossible.
Yeah.
You'd have to get South Sea Islanders, and they'd be great at it, but and you're paying them full wages.
Yeah.
It's probably not economical anymore.
No, but the Yeah, and look, I looked at a farm in Dunoon for a bloke to give my opinion on whether or not it was viable. It was one of those Dunoon farms where a tree had been planted anywhere there was a space. You know, it was the most impractical farm. There were rows of as little as 3 trees. And I just said, well, how do they harvest this place? And the real estate agent said, oh, well, they normally hire in backpackers to hand pick it. I said, well, good luck with that. You know, I mean, there's...
The last few years?
Yeah, well, the last couple of years in particular. But the idea of hiring backpackers in cheaply to harvest your nuts for you is a very short-sighted...
I only know one grower who was guiding about doing that, and it was exploitation.
Yeah.
I think these people were stuck on the farm, both by having to have their visas signed by him to say that he'd done 3 months' work.
Yeah.
And otherwise they would have run a mile. They just had to stay there, and you know, they were just marooned on his property. And he did this regularly, and he would get 10 backpackers from Byron. He'd have work for 2.
Yeah.
8 of them would leave just in disgust, even though they really needed the work for their visa, and the other 2s didn't have enough time to look for more, and they just had to do his. You know, they were 3 months. They had to get 3 months' work. They had 3 months ahead of them. They went looking for someone else. They're not going to get 3 months in.
Well, we can't operate that way.
So it's just immoral.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
exploitation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that going on at the moment, but in all kinds of horticulture.
I'm amazed that I'm seeing your dogs chew up the odd macadamia nut.
Yeah, well, they got into a habit in the drought.
How are their teeth strong enough for that? Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't get that at all.
Well, they never used to, but the drought year, the shells were so thin that they could just eat them.
Yeah.
Like the Nutana Glens are really hard shells, but they were hoeing into them.
Well, they must be thin shells though, because if they're 48% kernel recovery, that must mean the shell isn't much.
Hard.
Yeah. Oh, they're still hard though.
So I'll show you some of the Nutty Glen this year. Showed you those ones up at the house.
This looks like a Nutty Glen.
That's a Nutty Glen.
These
ones falling off here won't be.
Hold it up to the camera
so it's not completely ripe.
Right.
But
see, there's the hint that it's tetraphylla. It's that golf ball surface, that rough surface.
Yes.
That gives it away. Big nut.
That's another Nutty Glen.
Yeah.
Look how smooth it is.
That's more smooth. There's a distinctive line down the centre.
I've never seen them like that.
Yeah.
And it's the first crop. See how ripe it is?
Yeah.
See that flowered in March.
So you got a lot of early season flowering too, didn't you?
Yeah, especially in these Nutty Glens.
What about your 3, 4, 4s?
Come out like not looking like Nutty Glen.
I wonder what they're like inside.
I don't know why.
They're smaller. That's a smaller one though too.
Yeah. Look, I wouldn't even think that would be a Nutty Glen, but it probably is. It could have come from those trees, but I'll soon find out. No, it's nowhere near right, but
no, that's immature.
it is another.
Okay, so that's
the size of them.
So show us what an immature kernel looks like. You can see that it's not browned up at all.
No.
So is that insect then, or is it just a wind drop or something?
Knocked it off.
Maybe the stem was weak.
That's an old lay site for a thing, but it was probably unsuccessful.
Yeah.
For a nut borer.
Hard to tell, isn't it?
Bit hard to tell with that one.
But geez, you know, but did you hint that the crop isn't great on the Nutty Glen this year? Because I'm seeing a fair bit. I mean, maybe not much.
Patchy, like this here, I got my doubts whether they'll have a good crop on these particular trees. We have chopped out. This doesn't normally look like that. We've chopped off the limbs off this here. It was just all too dark and too. See, they're just growing straight up.
Yeah.
So we've cut a few limbs off this row.
Right. Look, it's interesting. There's a new method that may or may not catch on, and you can only do it with young trees, but it's a method I think a couple of farms are doing down in the Alstonville area, is that they're growing any tree, and I think they're doing it to 741s, which are an upright tree. They're coming along every year and top hedging the trees. So instead of the old hedger that used to hedge trees on the side, they're actually turning it 90 degrees and hedging the top every year, so prohibiting growth beyond about 7 or 8 metres. How does that sound to you?
Oh, it doesn't sound like a good idea to me, but time will tell.
Yeah. Why would it
I'd
not be a good
very-
idea?
Because everyone who's done it beforehand has sworn I'd never do it again.
Because it cuts fruiting wood off?
It leaves a lot of, depending on the tree, but a lot of the varieties, it leaves a lot of dead material up in the trees.
Okay.
Just takes years to come down.
It can be a rat's nest in them.
It does encourage rats. Dead branches anywhere encourage rats,
yeah.
especially up in trees.
Yeah.
It also shades the area that you're trying to let more light into.
Yeah.
It falls down in the wet weather, in the windy weather during your harvest period, and you've got all these branches falling down all the time, which is annoying. But
your
the
dog
response
doesn't want
from previous people who've done this top hedging is just a uniform explosion on the top of the tree of growth, often flushes like this, sort of flushes a 3 foot, then another 3 foot. Next thing it's back.
Yeah, well,
Back to what it was before.
I think the practice depends on doing it every year.
Yeah, well,
But almost like a shaving rather than a substantial cutting off of thick branches.
Yes,
Yeah.
I guess that.
Yeah.
Well, look, they've got to prove it that it's going to work. But you know, you look at the nature of a successful cropping stand of trees, and it's certainly not a flat area. It's like this. It's patchy. It's
One tree works in with the next.
and what it does is the light comes from here, and here through the day, and here like that through the season.
Yeah.
It means that all the parts of the trees at different times get enough to sustain their leaves.
They've got a finger in every pot.
You just hedge a top. The same. You look at any hedge of any plant, and it's an impenetrable surface, and the inside's kind of dead.
Yeah.
That's what tends to happen with hedging.
So you're definitely not a fan of side hedging
what's
either.
What's happening with side hedging is this, people who are anti call it the wall of death.
Right. I like it.
But look, you know, the tree requires leaves.
Yeah.
And you're chopping off the most productive leaves every year.
At the top.
At the top, where all your nut production is going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, they're trying to get the nut production down the whole tree. I don't know that necessarily the way.
So
What Sean's done, and when we've, you know, done much the same ourselves as these trees grew up, is limb removal.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, it's so much work to do limb removal. It's not.
No.
We got some contractors on a farm up here.
Yeah.
Brushbox Farm. And they did 1,000 trees in a day with 2 people.
Yeah.
No excavator or anything, just just people.
Tractor and chipper.
Oh no, not clearing it. No,
Oh.
I'm just saying pruned 1,000 trees, 2 people and no tools, just pole saw.
Yeah.
And a brain.
Yeah.
And I was just impressed that they could do that much. They could have done the whole farm in 4 days.
Yeah.
For a very small amount of money. I would have taken a lot longer myself, but they're doing it all day, every day. They're experts in trees.
You'll have to give me their number. But if you...
Yeah, they're called something Tree Services. And they do...
Enviro Tree Services?
Could be.
Yeah.
Could be.
They advertise in the AMS. It could be them.
This one old bloke was the principal, and he's...
he knows his stuff. Yeah.
He's just employed young people and trained them up in how to, you know, in his theories and that. And,
if you could keep a tree to a certain height...
Yeah, definitely not.
What would that
high.
be? What would that be? 8 metres?
Yeah, probably.
Or as high as the row? Or...
Yeah. Yes.
Right.
As high as the row is wide is not a bad...
not a bad measurement.
Yeah, if you've got 8 metre rows, you can't have them wider than 8 metres. Right. But look, in saying that...
So the answer then is selective limb removal to 8 metres. If we say that's a gold standard.
It's known to work really well.
Yeah.
So those that have selected this way of doing it over the last 20 years, I suppose we've been doing these sort of ideas. It's been really successful for them.
Yeah.
Limb removal works.
Right.
You retain your full yield. You don't lose any yield from one year to the next.
Yeah.
You do a little bit every year. You got to keep onto it. You can't just let them get away. These have all got away
Right.
too tall.
Yeah, so now I want to use these as an example. This is perfect. I can see these trees in my own orchard, all through my own orchard. My 344s, I don't know if those are 344s, but
There's 16s, and all the rest in this paddock are Nutana Glenn.
you've managed to get A16s to grow that tall. That's amazing. But that's, okay, we'll assume...
Well, A16s are probably the smallest tree that I know of. But
yeah,
if
but that's tall.
We were going to remove this row. The reason they look like so tall and skinny is we cut all the vegetation off this side to give it space for this.
Yeah.
Then we decided A16's actually our best tree, and we'd have no pollinators left. So what we've gone is gone, oh, actually we'll remove this row and left that. So these should be right out here. These should be like this, you know, growing right out here and branches on, but we just changed our mind. So these were going to be all removed. See, that's why they like poles.
I can see this is an A16 now I look at it more closely.
Yeah, well, they don't look like A16s. I don't know about that one's an A16, but...
No, it's good. It looks like an A4, but...
A ring in or some sort.
No, that looks like an A4. But this one, okay, so supposing, for the sake of your argument, we've agreed that 8 metres is the ideal height, and you use selective limb removal to keep a tree to 8 metres. Is this tree capable of redemption? Because it's got one great big central leader. Yeah. And if you go up 8 metres, you're going to cut off half at least of the vegetation on that tree. So what's the answer for a tree like
about
that?
8 metres, don't you think?
Oh, I don't know. It looks taller than that.
It might be.
Anyway, but is there a selective limb removal that would work on that? Because there's one stem that goes up so high.
Well, selective removal becomes increasingly harder.
Yes.
When you leave it too long.
Yeah. But my orchard has been left too long, so I'm asking selfishly.
Oh, okay.
Is there an answer, or do you really just say, look, beyond a certain point, write them off, pull them up, replant?
I've seen. Look, these trees looked a lot worse when we first started thinning this row. So we thinned this row, and so these have recovered a bit.
Yeah.
They've got a little bit on this side now. It's not a lot, but they will shoot out of here.
You're sure of that? That they'll actually shoot out of a really old trunk? Because I mean, I hope mine will do that when I start doing. I've got a program in
eventually.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a program in which I will remove, you've removed one row, I've got a program and plan in which I will remove 2 rows and plant one new row in the middle of where those 2 were. And then you end up going from 7x4
that has done exactly that.
Yep, on Gorman. In Eureka, it's Gorman's Road, Eureka.
Oh yeah, also.
Well, there's one in Clunes.
The turn off to Clunes.
Yep.
To Eureka. That one in there has done exactly that.
It
looks great now, but it's a few years down the track.
Yeah. Do you believe that might work?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
What about the replant of trees that are just too far gone? Do you think that's an efficient way of getting your crop back? If the new varieties crop in 3 years or 4 years, which they allegedly do, like the MCT1, would it not be worth, particularly with those Hawaiians that sulk after pruning, is it not more efficient to replant?
You're never going to know that till you try. Not the answer I want to know, is it?
No. I've got enough.
It's something that's a little bit general to say.
Yeah.
I've seen a farm, McGowan's farm in Queensland.
Yep.
Where they got 344s and what was their other variety? It might have been 741, but anyway, whatever, another old variety.
Yep.
The trees were this big. Let's call them staghorning. They did.
Yeah.
And they chopped off. So there's a limb coming out here, they chopped it off there. There's another one coming out here, they chopped it here, and they chopped the central leader off a little bit taller. So they've got 3 huge stems. Pretty successful.
Right.
Really successful in 344.
Right.
And that's what got me going doing it. But there's a lot of problems you can see in this paddock here where we've done it.
Yeah.
Termites have attacked what the trees are coming back all right because of these big lumps of dead wood. They haven't all maintained all of the wood, And the termites have come in and the tree's not going to be ever any good.
Oh.
So there's a big risk that I never foresaw.
No, I
I
wouldn't
cut
have
them
either.
down tentatively, so I thought I might change my mind, because I change my mind all the time.
Yeah.
No use removing the whole tree. I'll just chop it off there, and that can stay there, and I'll see what happens with the rest of the
Right, so you
trees
did
either
selective
side.
limb removal, effectively.
Well, it's staghorning the tree.
Right.
In saying that, if you can keep, and you know, where you've got a big pole going straight up, there's not much you can do with that.
No.
As far as staghorning, you're just cutting off the tree at the trunk.
Yeah,
This
cutting it
one
off.
here, if I was doing it with this tree here, which is a nice one, I might leave this branch on here. Just leave it there for
the right
a year
one?
or two,
Yep.
and stag on the big tall ones. Cut
Yeah.
them all off. I cut that one off there, leave that one.
That's called
that
leaving
one.
nurse limbs, isn't
A
it?
nursing limb, and you
Yeah.
probably leave this one too.
Right.
And that's going to keep it kind of going
While the rest of the tree recovers.
So they always say never cut off more than a third of the tree, otherwise you'll end up with the zenny tree.
Yeah.
Otherwise you end up with root death.
Yeah.
Well, you don't want major roots to die,
No.
otherwise you get termites coming in on the dead bits, and then they just
Yeah.
go up the centre of the tree, and
Well,
eventually the tree will be no good.
I mean, macas are a small enough rooted tree to begin with, so yeah, they're relative to some. Yeah, but yeah. And which variety is this one? Is this a?
This is Nutana Glenn.
That's another Nutty Glenn. The leaves up the top of that can get massive, I've noticed.
Oh, yeah.
Really big leaf tree. And I can see that certainly it would have behaved differently.
So you can see at this point in time, if your trees look like that, staghorning is a really good option.
Yeah.
This one here,
It's next
so
to it.
easy to do.
Right, because we've got
could-
two big trunks
Yeah.
going all the way
So
up.
in this way, I would take the tallest one out, say like there,
Yep.
and
That
leave
is
that one at least for a year until this one's put out a heap of new growth.
Right.
So,
And then hope that maybe you can take the top out later once there's new side growth.
well, as soon as there is,
Yeah.
chop this one off.
Right. And let the new side growth take over.
Yeah, yeah.
So one becomes the nurse limb for the other.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, well,
you've got, and I can't see any just here, but well, even these A16s.
yeah.
That one there, well, it's probably okay. You probably could just cut, even though those two little nice limbs. It's very much higher than that. You're really not saving much in height, are you, by chopping them up much higher than that?
Well, you almost need a tree by tree strategy, is what you're saying.
Yeah, which is why I was recommending those people, because that's what they do. They just go in there and you know, work it out as they go.
I was wondering about the
Every
mechanics
tree
of
gets-
that. Do you have to follow them around and say, here, for this tree, I want you to do this?
No, this is the beauty
You
of
can
it.
delegate.
These guys are the brains.
Like you say, a pulse or and a brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want both of
and
those.
experience.
Yeah.
You know, the old guys,
Well, see,
way
experience.
beyond his retirement thing. But
Yeah. Experience I
he's
don't
just
have.
loves.
Now, is this a mohawk? Is this a deliberate, or is it just a drainage channel thing? You know how,
No, we can mow that bit. But
you know, the regenerative farmers are all into this, leaving this nature strip down the middle of the block. Are you a believer in it? I don't think I do. It looks to me like a rat's nest. But
it certainly looks like a rat problem.
yeah. I mean, you might fix a problem by creating harbouring
well,
beneficial
you're losing
insects.
yield.
Yeah.
You know, they're losing, like, and it's only a temporary problem anyway. Nothing wrong with temporary problems. If it's a 10-year temporary problem, well, it's probably all right. But
Yeah.
eventually the trees will grow over and there'll be no room in the middle to grow their thing anyway. So it's, I'm not saying it's bad.
No.
I think he's brilliant, the guy that's doing it all. But
Yeah.
he's not relying on that as income, that farm. I'm
No.
just guessing he's got plenty of money
Yeah.
and he's just having a play. Well, that's great. And he's couching it in an economic framework.
Sure. But some of us live off this stuff.
But
yeah.
for someone like me who probably can't actually knock out every row that late, so what we do, this one here is a bit early that we knock this out because there's still a big gap.
Yeah.
But we just figured the drain was more important.
It looks effective.
Okay, we lose a bit of yield here because it's not quite closed in enough before we removed it.
Yeah.
But the amount of erosion washing down through here, and it's washing nuts away too, and once they just kept on going and just disappeared.
Well, we can see down here there's a downhill slope leading into the bush. Yeah.
Yeah, it drops off heavily there.
Right.
But yeah, once it goes past the main area, you can't really pick it up anyway. We do actually go down and send down a hand picker down.
Oh, do you?
Out of the bush after a good thing. Oh well.
I know you got well, exactly. You got lidar mapping, and I just copied you. I got lidar mapping of Nutkin, I agree with you. It tells you a lot of information, or to me, it was almost bewildering the amount of data they give you over 30 or something charts.
I wish I'd had it used before.
Did you use that to create your drainage channels to work out where to put them, or was it more just a gut feel?
It was a gut feel and often wrong, but the lidar is always right.
Okay.
That's what we've found.
Okay.
And where we've failed, we can see from the lidar why we failed.
Oh, right. Well, that's so look, and then look, it was cheap. It was, I think, $400 for the whole lot, and there's a lot of analysis.
That might have been subsidised too. I know mine was. Mine was about $400, but it was.
Well, it's the one guy who does all of them. He's over in Western Australia now. I forget his name.
Me too.
But he plotted the new planting for me in the spare paddock, which you know yourself, and
what do you reckon that is?
Oh, some dock or something. I don't know.
Oh, it's a tree, but
it's not a maca tree, is it?
No, it isn't.
No.
Look, that's a taproot. Yeah, I thought it was a macadamia tree.
You know.
But that's a taproot, right?
The amount of stuff I've mown over in the last few days.
Macadamias are like any other tree. They have taproots.
Yeah.
That one.
Well, see, you can see that growing off the nut. That's an interesting.
Yeah, it's a taproot.
Yeah.
But look, this is the thing about taproots. Look, it's a continuation of the trunk all the way down, right?
Yeah.
If you've got this could have a taproot that long. It's probably been run over by the mower several times, but it's snapped it off. But who knows? But these will grow in sand. You know, you get a taproot this long.
Yeah. Every
time you pull them out of the sand, and you just snip them off with the secateurs and put them in your plastic bag.
Yeah.
They have taproots.
Yeah.
And it makes all the difference. If you're in an exposed site, that taproot makes all the difference. Yeah. Anyone who's done any fencing understands how important it is to have that solid thing going down deep enough into the ground. Yeah. That's what a taproot does. It's like a post that's sunk deep enough. You can't push it over.
Yeah.
If you have, just a pot, planting in a pot, it creates a root system like this.
Yeah.
People think that's what is natural. I've seen it so many times in the journals. Oh, macadamias don't have taproots. Because they have taproots.
Yeah.
Anyone nurseryman knows.
No, I've read it in the journals. And look, I just accepted what I was told. I thought, okay, it's a proteas.
I've been saying this for 40 years, and people
still don't listen to you.
Totally ignores me.
Yeah.
So if it has a taproot system, well, this is what happens. It breaks off here because there's no continuity. When it's like that, it can't break. These are very strong. These trunks. You never see them. Tornadoes. Excepting, you don't see them snap. It's like any tree. You don't see them snap apart from in tornadoes.
Yeah.
That strength is why we build houses out of wood. You know, it's.
Yeah.
If that goes down far enough into the soil, your taproot, your tree's never going to blow over. Not never, but it's not going to blow over. It's produced by growing them in pots, and like I said, this court case. They won that court case on the pecans because they said you've got to have bare-rooted trees, old trees. And right across every industry, including pecans, every nut industry all over the world are bare-rooted with the taproots intact. If the taproot's not intact, because every one doesn't come out perfect,
it'll keep growing around in circles.
No, you throw it away.
Yeah.
They throw them away. Anything that doesn't have taproot. There's a tree made to build for, can live for 150 years producing your nuts, except that every 30 or 40 years they're going to get blown over by a cyclone, so they're not going to.
Yeah. No, I can tell you a story recent.
And it might be in the first 20 years, just when you've spent 20 years of your life.
Yeah.
You only get 80 of them.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't much use.
Yeah.
You know, you can't spend 20 years producing something that's just going to blow over at the whim of the weather. And the weather is getting worse and worse, so we're told. Seems to be fairly apparent to most farmers. But
It has, so you've noticed a definite change in the 40 years you've been here? In terms of more extremes, is it like what the climate change people say? Are there more extremes of weather? Or just warmer?
Yeah, there's lots of things we've noticed, but first of all was no frosts. So Corndale Flats is our frosty area.
Yeah.
But we used to frost right up to here. When we bought the place, it had frost right up to about where that car is.
Well, they told me Rosebank was frost-free, but I suppose...
Well, you can say that pretty safely.
You can say that now, yeah.
I'm saying it will definitely never frost here again. I think it probably will in some extreme version of the weather, but we're probably about to get. But, you know, your farm, for instance, say down towards halfway down the hills, it would have had 40 frosts a year.
Wow.
Maybe 20 some years, 50 other years.
Okay. Well, I mean, the absence of frost is good for Macca's.
All through that cold period, well, it's less frosts.
Yeah.
Corndale, yeah, that's the sort of number. Now we get none, maybe one.
Yeah.
And it's really light.
Yeah. Not enough to damage trees.
Doesn't damage trees.
Yeah, well, that's nice.
Yeah, we frost protected.
Look at this beast here. I'm admiring that.
Oh, these. Admiring the A38. Well, they are.
This is A38.
They are an awesome tree.
Yeah.
They've not got a good crop on them this year, but still better than...
You don't think this is a good crop?
Oh, normally these one would have more, I guess.
So pollination maybe less this year, or was it
I didn't
flower damage?
I didn't think they were going to have much of a crop at all, but again, they've had a good crop.
I've just planted a few A38s as gap fillers.
Yeah.
I was going to say I got the chance to pick up some old trees from a nursery selling out for $6 a tree.
Wow.
Which, cheap, but they were old stock. They'd been in the pot for a couple of years, and I know
not ideal.
Not ideal, because this taproot that you're talking about will have been growing around in circles in the pot.
Well, now, not just the taproot, the ones that have responded, because they've already chopped the taproot off when they put it in the pot.
Yeah.
And now say you had sand that deep, right?
Yeah.
The tree would be this high, and the taproot would be there.
Yeah.
But you don't do that. You just put the sand in that deep. A foot deep.
And they sell it to the customer.
And then they go like that.
Yeah.
So they hit the bottom and go crooked.
Yeah.
Well, you snip that bit off.
Yeah.
But the pots are only really got about that much planting area in them anyway.
That's right.
By the time you fit and all that.
Yeah. Look, my agronomist said, look, if you can get them, use them as gap fillers, because I got plenty of gaps. Said, but never plant a new paddock.
Yeah, no, not in an exposed area. I think you can get away with anything in a really unexposed area.
Yeah. Well, I've had gap fillers grow up beautifully. Yeah.
Oh, look, it's marvellous what has done well.
Yeah.
There's no rule that it won't work. It's just you got to.
It's how
play
well
the odds, you know.
Yeah. No, it is a bit of an odds game. Yeah.
And you know, we went when we bought this farm, because I'd worked on 10 years in the nut industry of just patching up trees that are blown over and smashed.
Yeah.
Our idea was strong trees. That's why the Nutty Glenn.
Yep.
That don't blow up, that don't break.
Yeah.
And do what we can to get a good root structure under the ground. And half the trees we planted out as seedlings with the taproot intact.
Yeah.
And those trees have never, not one of them has ever blown over or even got a slope on it. Yeah. And when it comes to removing them, the trunks, you can feel what it's like to get them out of the ground. Like even with the excavator, it struggles to get them out of the ground. You can feel the taproot going right down to the ground. It just doesn't want to, and so often it'll just snap. Yeah. It'll snap before it pulls out of the ground. Well, this tree here, which is planted out of a pot, if we got the excavator there and just pushed against there, just keep on driving, it'll just tip over.
It'd fall over.
It's because here's its roots all going like that. It doesn't have that.
This isn't an A38.
A38, yep.
No. You think so? Well, maybe it is.
Yeah, they don't all look the same.
It looks like, oh no, maybe it is upright.
This whole row is A38.
Okay.
And there are ring-ins. I mean, the nurserymen don't get it right all the time.
No, you want them to though, because they're meant to be professionals at this. I see a big manure pile over here. Is that, or is that your spare chip.
Yeah, that's our chip mixed with manure and whatever chippings with, macadamia chippings that we've, any rubbish that we can chip.
Right. Have you ever tried tea tree mulch?
No.
Right.
Sounds promising. It's cheap.
It's quite cheap. It's partly why I asked.
Looks
I mean, yeah, I've got a couple of people I know who are fans of it.
Yeah.
And that they think
so they've used it and it looks good.
Oh no, and it also tends not to wash away. Apparently, it mats, and so it can hold other mulch down.
Matting worries me a bit.
Oh, does it?
Well, in terms of whether the harvester's going to pick it up.
Ah, yes.
So you've got a matting layer here.
Yeah.
And with our harvester, it would sweep the matting layer across.
Yeah.
And then into the harvester wheels. Well, it wouldn't want to be too matted by the time it gets into the harvest wheels.
No.
But look, I think even if it is a bit like that, you can still compost it for a little while.
Right.
And make it soft matting.
Yeah.
So, just one sort of stage more rotten.
Sure.
So that the fingers will break it rather than leave it. I don't think that's a huge problem.
No.
It's just a question of whether you just put raw stuff straight out of the oil presses out there. I think you'd be pushing it if it mats a lot.
Yeah.
If you use sweepers.
Well, that might be different.
Well, some people harvest the whole lot, don't use any sweepers. They harvest both directions.
Yeah.
In which case, they'd probably be fine.
I think you're being a bit hard on your A38s here. Look at this.
Yeah, well, everyone finds that. It's not particularly
No, that's
my A38s.
Yeah.
They just produce a lot of nuts, and see, most of those, they've got 3 or 4 on these, but mostly they only got 1 or 2 on each
raceme. Yeah.
raceme. Often you have 4 or 5.
Yeah.
But I still think it's the thickest amount of nuts on any tree on the A38.
Yeah.
Per,
Yeah.
area of volume. Trouble with A38 is it just breaks. It's a very weak tree.
It's willowy.
Well,
it's been described as willowy, and it sends up great big long arching branches that can be blown off.
Joints. The joints are just like 246.
Yeah.
They're just a little bit narrow, and they tend to split and break. And the whole tree is wrecked. There's plenty of trees in this paddock.
And that's how A203 gained, I think, greater favour than A38. It's supposedly got a good habit. Yeah, I'm told. I don't grow them.
Yeah, look, a lot of people plant A38s, but yes, I'd be looking at the new varieties to something that crops like that doesn't have the breaking problem.
Yeah.
This paddock here, probably there was only 90 trees originally in it. There's probably only 60 that haven't been smashed.
Wow.
These first 2 rows, well, there's 2 there that have been smashed. One down a bit further.
But it otherwise looks healthy.
That one a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one there's had most of it smashed off. You can see the limb looks alright out this way, but most of the tree was smashed off. And as you come down further, it's patchier and patchier, There's that tree. The last row lost half the trees.
Yeah.
Get a lot of breakages of major limbs, and then the next time the next one breaks off. But you can see this angle here.
Yeah.
It's not a strong angle, and it's a pretty good angle too, but
yeah,
they often grow even a bit tighter than that, whatever they break.
Do you ever on a personal level regret planting macadamias? Do you ever sort of say, if I had my time again, I'd have planted something else?
I do have something that probably would have made me a lot more money, but I don't know about in a huge volume.
You used to be good at citrus, didn't you?
Yeah, citrus is fairly competitive.
Yeah.
This isn't a very good environment
for citrus.
citrus.
No, you don't see it happen. But
well, people used to grow coastal citrus, and it's always heavily marked and susceptible to that black all over it, and it's just
sooty
hard
mold
work.
Yeah.
The pests and diseases of citrus is about 100 times thicker than the macadamia pests and diseases.
Really? Yeah.
Everything eats citrus.
Yeah.
And a lot of them mark the fruit.
Yeah.
All kinds of things. So yeah, not citrus on the coast.
Yeah. And coffee never really had a financial viability because
not really.
Price. I mean, as a boutique thing maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, those sort of boutique things that go down well where you had a cheap labour source.
Yeah, not anymore. Yeah.
Look, I don't know. You just see thousands of hectares in one planting.
Yeah.
Compared with a couple of acres. How are you going to compete? Well, really, what you're doing with growing coffee here is just marketing.
Yeah.
So
If you really want an Australian cup of coffee, then you can have one, but you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Like
and
the
you've got to
Zenfelds.
do restaurants and coffee places, and you've got to up against a lot of competition with Victoria and those classy brands from overseas.
Yeah.
First, you've got to convince them that some people will really like this coffee because it is quite a different coffee.
Yeah. It's very low in caffeine.
Low in caffeine.
Yeah.
And that appeals to a lot of people, and there's a negative for a lot other people.
Negative for me. I need a cup of coffee to get me going.
Yeah. Well, look, it's the only coffee I like is the local coffee. I don't drink coffee.
Ah, there you go.
But I do always enjoy the local coffee. Roast Bank Gold is gold to me.
Yeah.
It's more like drinking iced coffee, I suppose, in its lack
flavour.
of smell too and things like that. It's highly regarded to mix with other coffees. That's where you can sell
put a
it
little bit
into the world, but you've got to have massive areas to sell into the world market to be bothered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I don't think you made a bad choice in Macca's.
So, no. Look, I looked at guavas.
Yeah.
Didn't worked brilliantly in America. They brought guavas into the market, and within a couple of years, they'd taken over 10% of the total juice sales.
Yeah.
Oh, they're about 9% in Australia.
Now.
Don't know why.
Well, it could have been avocados. Avocados can grow here, but then there's a fair bit of supply of them now too. So.
Yeah, that's right. A few years ago, you had avocados. You were like had it made, and now I've got a friend who grows avocados organically, and he's not bothering to pick this year.
Yeah, but you've farmed Macca's through the years when you were getting $1.80 a kilo.
Yeah.
I mean, they must have been very lean years. $1.50.
Yeah.
I mean, they must have been very lean years.
Year, we were MPC shareholders. We bought that year because we thought, fuck, who's going to buy all our nuts?
Yeah.
After the previous season, and so we bought shares because they said they will buy our crop, and we got $1.50. Other growers that had supplied MPC for 10 years and weren't shareholders,
we're told we're not taking your nuts.
We can't take your nuts.
But even at $1.50, how do you put food on the table? Well, you must have at some point doubted whether it was
everything
worth...
was a lot cheaper.
Well, I suppose
our costs of production were a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
In those days.
Well, we certainly hope it doesn't go back to that now.
And no, we wouldn't have made any money.
No.
But it's better to get some of your costs back than...
Well, it's cash flow,
Yeah, cash flow, but no, you certainly wouldn't have made money.
Yeah.
There's a lot of years that were like that. It wasn't just 1 year, it was every 7 years for 3 years.
Oh my goodness.
It's only 4 good years and 3 bad years.
Yeah.
So it had started at $1.50 or less and gradually creep up to around $3, $3.50 and then crash again. That's sort of...
that was the pattern.
The pattern.
We'll see what happens this year.
Yeah.
We'll look,
It's been 14 years now without a price dip. Well, and this hasn't been the classic price dip. This has just been a
correction.
Well, it's not. It's always gone like this.
Yeah.
This time it's gone, and then just started to drop off a little bit.
Yeah.
That's because we're marketing nuts, or at least trying. Whether we're marketing sufficiently is not. You look at, say, a successful product worldwide, and generally the most successful products spend half their money, half their production costs, or half the retail costs are on marketing.
Yeah.
Some things are ridiculous, like tennis rackets. Or sand shoes or something. Whatever they call them these days. But Nikes and things like that.
Cross trainers.
Most of their budget. There's a tennis racket company that does no advertising, right? It sells its brand new, latest design rackets in the first season for $180. The same racket, that Nadal's using or whatever, from a company that advertises, pays Nadal millions of dollars to use their racket.
Yeah.
probably more than millions, but they're $500 a racket in the first season. The second season they dropped back to about 350, and the third season they're down to 250, and that's what they sell at. This company can sell its rackets every year for $180. You know? So macadamias are no different.
Except that there's a million of us selling a generic product. So is the industry marketing idea one? Obviously that sounds like one you support. We need to spend some money as an industry through the levy or whatever else.
It's effectiveness, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to have faith in your marketers before you give them the money.
Yeah.
If you don't think they're going to generate any useful thing, don't give them the money.
Well, I hope they're all right. Yeah, that's what they're meant to be, the Australian Macadamia Society. But you hope.
Well,
yeah.
There's a bit of dissent going on at the moment about them.
Yeah.
But,
we'll see if they crack new
I
markets. They're good at Korea. They've had some successes.
And some bagging of the previous woman who just lives around here now. Her, didn't you?
Well, there was a
neighbour.
change. There was a change of marketing manager.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
no, I know she lives locally, but there's just differences in approach, you know. So there's
she was successful observably,
yeah,
and that everything that had been spent by the AMS up to then has sort of gone, yeah, well, let's just hoping it's going to thing. But she took on the approach of a professional marketer and said that if we're going to spend your money, if we're going to attract more of your money for marketing, we've got to actually show that results work.
right.
And you know, the development of the South Korean market, which is, you know, one of the most valuable, profit-wise and price-wise, and that's down to her.
Yeah.
And she did so little to achieve it.
Yeah.
She was just targeted the right direction.
Yeah.
The actual money that it cost to develop that market was
Small.
minuscule.
Well, that's a great result.
And
Wish you could do that to India. Yeah.
She could.
India's next. Yeah. Yeah.
That's right.
Well, we
Get
hope.
Brett Lee onto Macca's.
Yeah.
Because that's what sold it over there.
Yeah.
So they have a like the Princess Di equivalent over there.
Right.
Who's a princess of some, you know, it's a democracy. It's
Right.
a vestigial royal family.
Yeah.
So she's a princess. She loved macadamias. Travels
Make
the
her
world,
the
you know.
ambassador. Yeah.
And they got her to do YouTube videos, which just everyone had to have what she had.
Wow.
It was that simple.
Fantastic marketing.
So marketing can be very effective for very little dollars
if you're clever. Yeah.
if you pick the right people at the right time for the right target audience that you're going for. And I really had a lot of faith in her. As to the new people, well, don't record this bit.
But no. Well, I have to record because I can't edit it out. But we'll see with the new people. Obviously, they're yet to be proven in the same way. They're yet to be proven in the same way as the past people.
Only evidence I've got so far is the of their skills is the new recipe book. They put out a recipe book every thingamabob, and
Yep. I like the recipes.
yeah,
I share them with people.
Photography is so bad.
Oh dear.
Well,
yeah,
look,
yeah.
I don't know. I've only seen it online.
I see
and
it
the
on
pictures-
Facebook.
The pictures come up pretty good online. They should be good colour and everything like that.
Yeah.
But if the print colours are what they are, the whole thing looks dismal.
Oh, they need better
and the
printers.
recipes
Yeah.
are very ordinary recipes.
Yeah.
You know, like one of them's a hamburger with some sort of macadamias on it or something. Oh, it's a fucking hamburger. Everyone's got to make a hamburger. You know, I honestly, I think
Yeah,
it
we need
shows-
to hope for better.
It shows lack of brilliance.
Yeah.
I think to succeed, you almost got to be brilliant these days, or
Yeah.
have elements of brilliance
Well,
to succeed.
hopefully. Yeah.
Or monopoly power.
Yeah. Well, Peter, thank you for this discussion. It's been a wonderful visit, and it's a privilege. I mean, after nearly 3 years here, it's the first time visiting your farm, and how long have I been promising to do it? But it's just lovely to see what goes on, and it gives me something to aspire to, because as you know, my farm's in rehab, and I've got to work back from a pretty poor position to something like this if I can. So
Honestly,
thank you for
I should
the
come and see your
knowledge.
place.
Yeah, no,
And
and
it's more specific.
yep.
You know, like I was saying about
We'll do a
those different shaped
walkthrough.
trees.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all you know, I hate answering questions. People go, oh, you never do that. Oh,
Yeah.
sometimes you might.
Yeah.
Or you never top hedge a tree. I never use a hedger. Well, it's not never, but...
No, I'm not into nevers either, but if you ever want to come around, we can organise it one day and we'll do a walkthrough and you can tell me what's wrong. And I'll take both barrels.
Yeah, I know a lot of it's not your problems, but I mean, it's...
No, I've got to fix it though. Yeah, it's my job now. So anyway, but thanks again, and on behalf of the people who watch, who've watched this long, thank you for watching. And it's been Peter. I'll boast that it's of many YouTube appearances, it will be Peter Fraser's longest appearance, and we'll see if he can top it later. Thanks. Bye bye.